it's very rare that people of color are actually the leads. Like, I know even a lot of the films that I've done in the past year or years have been a lot of supporting roles. So this is also my first time ever leading a film.
Hey there, it's Kristen, and today we are chatting with the cast and creatives of The Fallout, which just premiered at South by Southwest. I gotta start out with you, Megan. You've had such a rich career in the industry, and this is your first feature that you wrote and directed. So I'd love to hear about the inspiration for The Fallout and just how this cast came together.
I've been sort of slowly transitioning into writing and directing over the last few years. But yeah, this is the first time I've done it in a feature capacity, which is very exciting. It kind of came out of this frustration at the situation for young people in America, but I was pretty nervous to take a stab at it because I felt like I was Canadian and I hadn't experienced this. I hadn't been through something like this, so I was really worried about getting it right. But eventually, I reached a point where I just couldn't stop thinking about it, and I felt like I had a very clear take on how I wanted to tell the story. So I just kind of went ahead and did it, and I did a lot of research, though, throughout the process, making sure that it tracked emotionally and wasn't triggering and all of those really important things. And the casting process was really easy and simple, too. I really wanted to make sure that the characters, or that the cast was the actual age of these characters, and they were really authentic and people who really, represented the characters or how I had envisioned them. And Jenna and I met through a connection through a mutual friend, and we got together and had coffee and talked about this script, and I was just so immediately impressed and blown away with her, and I was like, holy shit, this is Veda. This is so easy, and she just knocked it out of the park, and I just am so forever grateful to her for bringing this character to life. And the same thing with Maddie. It's funny because the character was written as somebody who dances, but I had made it very clear to casting that it didn't have to be somebody who danced in real life, or it could be somebody, we could change the skill, if it was somebody who was a musician or whatever. It was just the fact that they had this way to express themselves that wasn't through speaking necessarily. But Maddie and I connected and talked before and just really hit it off, and she came in and read and just totally blew me away. And I was just, after I saw her, I was like, she's the one.
I'd love to hear from you guys kind of how you got into that mindset, but also what it was like working opposite each other.
The incident that affects and changes Veda for the rest of her life is something that I have never experienced. So it was really about educating myself on the topic, what it may have been like reading articles and watching videos and just kind of doing the best I possibly could to be as understanding as possible. And then in terms of bonding with other characters, Maddie and I met up a few times before we started shooting, just to kind of get to know one another and become comfortable with one another and form a relationship of our own, just so that whatever we did on screen became more natural. But I also think that it took away from a lot of the stress of what we were shooting, considering a lot of what we were shooting was darker material and more intense material. But then, a lot of it is really, fortunately, I had a lot of months ahead due to the pandemic to really get to know the character and kind of decide what her personality was going to be like, how awkward she was going to be, what kind of music she was into, just kind of, get to know Veda better, which was really beneficial for me.
It was really nice to have Jenna and how we created that bond before we started, because like Jenna said, it really helped kind of lighten the mood and like feel like we had each other, and we knew like, even if we have to go into this heavy scene, like we're there with one another, we got each other. So it was really nice. And Megan made it such a safe environment for us to work every day. So yeah, as much as there was a lot of heaviness, we also had a lot of lighthearted, fun moments together.
Megan, I just feel like this film so accurately kind of like captured that Gen Z culture. How did you kind of dive into that authentic voice?
I love films that are just really authentic in whatever voice they're speaking to. Like, I love movies like that, like The Florida Project or Eighth Grade, and Eighth Grade is another example. Like, that director's a dude who like wasn't that age, but I thought that film was extremely authentic. So I think it's a little bit of just tapping into, checking in with that generation. Like, I certainly spoke to people that age and was like, does this track for you? Is this how you would speak? Is this how you do that? But I also just tried to, I guess, like tap into the 16 or 17-year-olds in me as I was writing it, and just try to keep it as authentic as possible.
We're following this really compelling story about people trying to deal with trauma in different ways. Some of them are struggling to open up, some of them are turning to, maybe different substances. And I think that something that really stood out to me was just like this pressure to kind of change the world, like, after these kinds of big events. And I think there's so much going on in the world right now. I think it can be easy to feel overwhelmed in general, but have you ever kind of felt that pressure to kind of make a change in the world, and how do you deal with that? And I'd love to talk a little bit more about just how you guys explored that in this movie.
I think a big part, especially working in the industry that we work in, I think that there's a lot of artificial there's a lot of artificial environments that you encounter, and I think Maddie and I both I know for me personally, I know that I have a really great family who always instilled important values in me, and knowing the kind of person Maddie is and the kind heart that she has, I'm sure she's grown up in a similar environment. So I think that a big part of having this platform and wanting to bring some truth and reality into this weird industry that we live in, I think it's important that we use our platforms for good, and we do the best that we possibly can to raise awareness on things that aren't getting enough attention as they should, or being supportive of things that are occurring in the world, and really just taking a stand, especially with social media and having these platforms. It's important that young people who follow you or are keeping up with the kind of work that you're doing, that they see that or are empowered to speak up and use their voice as well.
There is some sort of pressure to feel the need to speak up or educate, and I think it's just most important that we're present and we're learning ourselves. Like, I've learned so much in the past year, and I'm continuing to educate myself, as I think most of our entire generation is, and it's really, really special and important that we all have each other. And I think it's also kind of been something that I learned throughout filming the movie is everyone deals with trauma differently, obviously. Some people take the route to use activism and make a change, but it's also, I think we need to make it more okay for people who are processing things differently and going through things differently. And everyone's on their own journey and can take as much time as they need to heal.
The pressures of social media does feel uniquely specific to Generation Z. And I think this sort of balance of figuring out who you are in real life versus who you are online, and when you do have a platform, what do you use it for, I think is something that I really wanted to tap into, because it certainly feels like I didn't feel that pressure as a young person, but it certainly feels like a very prevalent pressure that whether you have a large following or an average following, how you use your social media platform and your online presence is something that is very much on the forefront of Generation Z's mind, I think.
I just thought that it was so interesting the way that you captured all these different ways that people are kind of processing these things. And, that it's okay to not necessarily have to stand up and be like, I'm changing the world, but kind of like work on yourself and maybe you'll get there, or, you can be there for someone else. Like you guys as two characters were there for each other.
Yeah, it's certainly so amazing and admirable, the people that can, process what they've been through and turn it into incredible change. I think those people are literally heroes. It's incredible. But just because you can't do that doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. And I hope that's a takeaway of the film, that everyone does process things and heal and use their experience for their own healing in whatever way they know best is okay.
Now, Jenna, as a fellow Latina, it always makes me really happy to be able to see a Latina leading a project, especially, in a space where we don't always necessarily get to see that representation, with you leading this coming of age story. Is that something that you kind of are conscious of when you're going into a project like this?
Yeah, somewhat, especially as somebody who I've been acting for 9-ish years now. So I think in the years that I've been acting, I've seen a lot of change in the industry and the slow adjustment to being more diverse and accepting more diversity, and I guess just having more people of color on screen. It's very rare that people of color are actually the leads. Like, I know even a lot of the films that I've done in the past year or years have been a lot of supporting roles. So this is also my first time ever leading a film. So not only did I think that was so cool of Megan to hop on the board and kind of take the initiative, because another thing about our industry is people don't often change until somebody else takes a chance on you. And once that chance is made, and once somebody sees something in you and pushes you to be the best you possibly can be, I think that's when people kind of start to take notice and kind of start moving forward. So I think that this was a really, really incredible experience for me, but then also just again, for young women of color who are growing up watching people on screens, it's important that we find these storylines relatable and truthful. And for me, I know film should always 100% be about or focus on being a reflection of the real world. And our world is so much more colorful than Hollywood has made it out to be. So it's really, really nice to see that change happen, and the color be brought to the screen.
If you like this interview, you can check out more of my South by Southwest coverage right over here, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.